Hello there. My name is Jonathan, also known as Die Womprad Die. You found Binging the Force with Rocky Mountain Fan Force. This is the place where Star Wars friends get together, rewatch Star Wars shows, and are left hanging right over that cliff. You can find us on Facebook at Rocky Mountain Fan Force, this show on a multitude of podcast platforms, and on YouTube at Binging the Force. You can also find our merchandise store at bingingtheforce.myspreadshop.com. Tonight, I am proud to be joined by Michael.
Greetings, programs.
Dale.
Welcome aboard.
Jefferson.
Howdy.
And James.
Howdy.
Welcome. So, today we are watching The Mandalorian, Season 2, Episode 16, titled The Rescue, also known as that one with Luke, where Din takes off his helmet and we all cry tears of nostalgia.
Spoilers!
Total spoilers. So before we get started with spoilers in the episode, though,
if this is the way you're watching this first, don't go back and watch it and then watch it with us.
Yes, don't watch it here for the first time because you can't watch the whole thing anyway. So hopefully you have watched it. Hopefully you've enjoyed it, as we all did, I'm sure. And come here for excellent commentary. So, however, my question tonight for the panel. In this episode, we see the end of that famous television duo, The Mandalorian and Grogu. Or so we were led to believe, since this was the season finale. So I think the show is a success, not only because of all the Star Wars feels that it gives us in this episode, not only because Mando is awesome and a fantastic father, but also because it cemented a pop culture duo in our hearts. That Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau broke apart. So panel, I challenge you, name a television duo that doesn't work unless they have each other and why they must be together. So I will see.
I'm going to go ahead and start with where we're living right now, which is that it's not television. I mean, it could potentially be television, I guess, but I'm going to go Han and Chewie. I'm going to say, if you don't have the duo of Han and Chewie, you don't have the relationship there that it's. I mean, I don't know that we would watch a Chewbacca by himself movie or TV series.
That's called the holiday special almost. Yeah. Yeah, and I think Han totally works.
Inseparable duo. I think that they're paired for life and an inseparable duo there.
Yeah, like the Solo movie. You had to bring kind of Chewie in partway through because they are a necessary duo. Good point.
Right, that was the other end of it. The Solo movie was too much Han. The holiday special was too much Wookiee. So
if only we could combine them.
Right.
Well, I'll go next. I'm going to go with a classic duo, Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson. Very specifically, the television version that was done on British TV in the 1980s with Jeremy Brett playing Sherlock Holmes and David Burke playing Dr. Watson.
Oh, sure, you're going Cumberbatch there.
Yes. And the reason they don't work separately is because Sherlock Holmes needs somebody to talk to because he's so brilliant. If he solves the mystery by himself, he doesn't have anybody to explain all of his reasoning. And so we don't get to see how brilliant he was. We just see that guy did it. And then the show's over. That's not very entertaining. He needs somebody to talk to explain the plot and explain all of his reasoning and explain why he's so brilliant.
If Holmes sees a tree fall in the woods, is there anyone to explain the deduction to? Did he really see it?
Yeah, exactly.
And Watson's really a stand-in for the audience too, right? Because I'm always like, wait, what? Can you explain that to me? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Doctor Who uses the exact same formula. They have they always have the companion character because the Doctor needs somebody to explain the plot to.
You had to get British sci-fi in there, didn't you?
I did. I had to get Doctor Who in someone.
Nice. I'm going to go with Itchy and Scratchy from The Simpsons. Much like Tom and Jerry, the two characters feed off each other. It's not just exciting to be able to watch just Itchy or just Scratchy. Same with Tom and Jerry. Like you need that nemesis. You need that rivalry there. So 2 is the perfect number. 1 wouldn't cut it. 3 is too many. If you add in Poochie, the whole dynamic is off. So Itchy and Scratchy, that's my duo.
I mean, Itchy and Scratchy basically is Tom and Jerry, but with violence.
Yes.
More violence.
Excessive violence. Yes.
And who would they destroy if they didn't have each other?
Mm.
Yeah.
Let's see. I think I would maybe go with thinking Indiana Jones lately. Indiana Jones in Short Round in the Temple of Doom, of course.
Short round's an interesting choice.
Yeah.
Why short round instead of Marion or?
Yeah, because I'm thinking
What?
the only thing Indiana Jones can't be parted with is his whip. Like Indiana Jones and his whip is like an inseparable duo.
Mm.
Or his hat?
Yeah, I think for that particular movie, it's very much about the kind of those two guys' relationship. Of course, Indiana Jones basically goes and rescues him from the evil, Temple of Doom, and their relationship in the early parts of the action and stuff of that movie. I was just thinking about them just because recently the actor that played Short Round, won an Oscar and stuff like that.
So I was listening to this other podcast called the Indiana Jones Minute, where they're talking about Indy and Short Round, and they made a really good point about how is it like a father-son relationship, or is he even being a good father by like kind of sort of promising, hey, I'm going to take you to America at the end of this adventure, or is it like, hey, here's this kid who is in trouble, and I'll kind of use him, to get what I need, but I'm not really taking care of him that much because he's driving a car and he's laughing at Willie. And, Indy is honestly not the best parent, but it's this weird dynamic between the two of them that I think you could only kind of get away with in the 1930s.
I don't know. They did
Absolutely.
replicate that relationship in 1969 in the new movie with new characters, and it was even more questionable.
Very questionable indeed, but maybe that's why it makes them a good duo, right? They're memorable.
Yep.
So for mine, I went lowbrow. I went Beavis and Butthead. They're perfectly matched idiots who they enable each other. They're lost without each other. They fight each other, but they're also kind of fight. Nice Cornholio, love it. But they kind of fight. They are so simpatico when they're fighting against the outside world. So they're kind of perfectly matched. They need each other to just kind of barely survive. So and they're freaking hilarious. So excellent. Good job, you guys. Thank you for playing our game. You all get 1,000 points. Appreciate you playing. So in this episode, we have the season finale for season 2. We have action, and then action, and then drama, and then a cliffhanger. So
And then tears, lots and lots of tears.
Tears. I hope you brought your tissues and your handkerchiefs, gents. Shall we roll and see what happens?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Sounds good.
All right.
Roll that beautiful bean footage. Yeah. You
Oh, you have something I want, of course.
There's all the usual stuff you need to know to understand tonight's episode.
Yeah, they kind of pull from several different episodes here in this previously, don't they?
You can tell how complicated the plot of the episode is going to be by how long the previously on section is.
Right.
Lots and lots of characters, lots and lots of plot lines to remind you of, because everything's getting thrown into the pot in this one.
Sure.
Yeah. The line that Ahsoka's there says there aren't many Jedi left. So how many does she know right now? It's not like she said, "Oh, I only know of one Jedi," or there aren't any. So she must know of multiple, right?
Well, she knows of Anakin, right?
No, because this is post OT.
Post Return of the Jedi. So
All
Anakin's
right.
gone.
Who does she
So
know?
obviously she knows of Luke, and I mean, as viewers, Luke's the only one for sure that we know of.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that I mean, it's something we could discuss at the end. But I mean, did anyone even have an inkling of who was going to show up or that they were going to show up? Because I didn't. I mean, it took me completely by positive surprise.
Yeah, I honestly I can't remember if I got the ending of this one spoiled.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we'll have to tell the story after the fact, but yeah, there's a big story with that with me. So we've got the return of Dr. Pershing here.
And more importantly, the return of the coolest bounty hunter spaceship ever.
Yeah.
Right.
whatever
You have
we're
no
calling
doubt
it
who's
now.
going to win here, right? You know Boba Fett's going to win.
This
It's always cool to
this
see
pilot,
space battles.
yeah.
It's fun to see the familiar ships getting to do more stuff too, because both of these ship designs do very little in the films that they're in.
Yep.
So it's nice to see them get to zip around and shoot at each other and stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah, the shuttle's designed for transport, right? It's not designed to be fighting in battles.
Sure. Fun merchandise fact: at the time it came out, the Imperial Shuttle toy was the largest toy that Kenner made.
Did you get one?
Oh.
I didn't have one. That was outside of my parents' price range, but
Yeah, ditto.
I had a lot of the smaller stuff. I did have the Death Star playset that they did for the first
Nice.
movie.
The wedge
Yeah, the kind of I'm not sure what to call it exactly, but it was
pie
it was
piece.
meant to be the inside of the Death Star.
Right.
Yeah, my brother had the Boba Fett ship here, and I was always jealous.
As you should have been.
They're very cool.
I like how the comms were down on the ship, yet Boba Fett was able to talk to them still
Sure.
through the comms.
Yeah, and here's Imperial integrity at its finest,
Yes.
using Dr. Pershing as a human shield.
Well, his options are kind of limited here, I think, right?
Yeah.
He knows he's toast, but what other options does he have?
Yeah, it's true.
Well, they might have let him go. He doesn't know that.
Well, he thinks like an Imperial, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Imperials, they wouldn't let me go.
The thing about people with no integrity is they assume that nobody else has any integrity either.
Right. Yeah, he said he didn't have a death wish, but then he acts pretty stupid here. So
Yeah.
I love that. Which one?
yeah, the rebel tattoo on her cheek. I guess now we know why she didn't cover that up last season when Grief Karga had her cover up her arm. That it doesn't really signify you're sympathizing with rebellion or the New Republic. I think it's more of like a mourning kind of thing, for the fallen, or
Tear.
that that your planet got blown up.
So why was he antagonizing her? What did he hope to do? I mean, is he just because he's a nasty Imperial?
Yeah, he's a nasty Imperial. He's
Yeah,
hoping to
he's a
escape.
jerk.
I often find myself wondering. I watch Law and Order, and every week the suspect always runs, and I always find asking myself why. Why do they run? They can't think they're going to get away.
It's particular. Have you been watching the newest version, the newest pair? Okay, yeah, because I know that Jalen, the new cop. I mean, he literally visually gets exasperated every single week. Like he on a week-to-week basis gets increasingly angry when they start doing this. Like, are you kidding me? Every single week, he gets angrier and angrier at the person who runs.
I do like how they trade off. The two cops trade off who's going to chase the suspect.
Nice.
That's awesome to see Mando and Boba Fett walking into this bar. Two Mandalorians side by side. Yeah, everybody in this bar, you better piss yourselves.
Yeah.
Especially the Rodians. The Rodians are particularly scared.
But there's already two Mandos inside the bar.
Right.
Yes. Now matters
So
are
it's not
worse.
like they never seen him before.
And
those guys who ran off are thinking, okay, 4 is too many. We're out of here.
Yeah, three of the 4 are willing to take off their helmets. So one of these things is not like the other.
Right.
Which I think gives us the impression that Mando's group are kind of fringe. They're not necessarily mainstream. The never take your helmet off group.
Yeah, that's where season 3 really goes. They get into that kind of, cultural part. Instead of just the season 1 and 2 is more about the bond between Mando and Grogu and things that try to break that bond.
And as Boba Fett mentions here, he's not a Mandalorian and never said he was.
Yeah.
Dale, I know you like that. Well, isn't that the quack to call him the stifling slimy or whatever?
Yeah. It's a good line. It's like the smack talk when you watch wrestling, which Sasha Banks, that's how they got her character, or her as the actor. That I think that's what they wanted her to portray. So
yeah, and these Mandos, whether they're men or women, they always got to kind of size each other up, push each other a little bit, talk some smack.
Oh.
Yeah,
Oh, that was a uncalled
Those
for. Like my armor was given to me by my father. You mean your donor? That was nasty.
yeah. And here's some wrestling moves, some breakaway tables.
Mhm.
But
I mean, it's good. You always want to see,
That doesn't
Boba
work
Fett
on
get to
another
fight.
Mandalorian. Come on.
yeah.
Yeah.
She tells him he likes a back to tank, and it's like, well, little known fact, Boba Fett actually loves the back to tank.
He
He goes
does.
there
Yes,
to
he
chill.
does.
You sure saw that actress's background as a wrestler there. Just
Yeah.
And this is why everybody in the bar left, because they know Mandos get together, they cause property
they
damage.
just fight.
Yeah, not entirely accurate that Bo-Katan says she's heard that voice 1,000 times, because I don't think D. Bradley Baker is in the Boba Fett costume there, but
No, but
I
wouldn't that
get
be
the
cool?
idea,
Wouldn't
Yeah.
that be cool if he were?
right? But they did use Tamara Morrison, in for Empire when they updated the audio, on that. So,
Yeah, they had him redo all of Boba Fett's 2 lines or however many.
right.
Must have taken all of 5 minutes in the recording studio
Yeah.
to do all of
I like
that.
how
So the
Mando's kind of
the
sitting there
Mando
watching
doesn't
all
know
this
what
happen.
the dark saber is here again.
Yep.
Dr. Pershing looking out of his depth as usual.
He is helpful in this scene, and this scene, like Bo-Katan, like I don't know how much time has passed since they went and picked her up, but like she has got quite the plan here as far as how to navigate through the ship and everything, and it sounds like a good strategy.
Yeah, of the 4 of them, she's definitely the schemer.
Right.
And Cara Dune is the snarky one.
Hmm.
And you forget that Fennec Shand is here as well. She only gets like a couple throwaway lines. She's kind of extra at this point.
Well, there's a lot of colorful characters in this scene, so you got to fight to hold your own in a scene like this.
Yeah, and we'll talk about it later, but like that's a good point. As soon as some certain characters enter a scene, they take up the screen.
Right.
So spoilers for later in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, here's the scene where they're explaining how they're going to do the thing.
Mm-hmm. The plan that will inevitably go not as planned.
The heist of the kid.
You say another heist, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mando's done plenty of
Actually,
heists. He should be good.
I mean, kind of more like a Dirty Dozen mission, but
Yeah, but you can, in movies like this or stories like this, you can always tell when the plan is going to fail. The more detail they give you about the plan, the more of that is not actually going to happen. Try to enact the plan.
Something's going to go wrong.
Yeah.
Daniel, there's going to be what did she say? Skank in the scud pie?
The old skank in the scud pie. I think she got together with Pelimoto to work on her slang prior to this episode. They used the same lines on Tatooine.
I don't know. Star Wars slang, sometimes it's hit or miss,
Dink Ferrick.
Scruffy looking nerf herder still the best.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're always kind of stuck wanting to have these really hard-boiled characters, but have it be for a family audience.
So this is good. Their plan is they're going to attack. They're going to sneak in. Some people are going to be diversion. Some people are the main going to get the child here, right? And it's the way they convince Bo-Katan is with his dark saber. I mean, that's huge for her, right? If she can get that,
give her a little bit.
She's willing to risk everything for it.
Yeah, she doesn't tell Din that it's called she's like this weapon, and then she just is like the dark saber, blah 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 blah. Like you know the dark saber.
He's like, yeah, whatever. Give me the kid.
Yeah, we see Katie O'Brien here as the comms officer. She doesn't get a lot of scenery or a lot of lines in this episode, but surprisingly we we get to see her again next year. So
One, she is the only Imperial besides Gideon who gets any lines in this part of the story. So clearly, I think even though it's not many, clearly she's important.
yeah,
This is cool. We get to see some love of TIE fighters launching
Mm-hmm.
and like thrust out, right? Instead of just like coming down out at the bottom. Like it's like a tube, like in Battlestar Galactica or something.
Battlestar Galactica launch tube, yeah.
they can't kind of keep reinventing that. The TIE fighters can hang, they can be stored underneath things and kind of unfold. So
Sometimes the wings fold, sometimes they don't.
right.
It's whatever they need it to be for that day.
I always kind of like this, like seeing, kind of the interiors of how, the Imperial Navy works inside the ship.
Mm-hmm. That, to me, that's always been a lot of the appeal of Star Wars, is how workaday it is. We see, I mean, it's all total fantasy, but within that fantasy, we kind of get to see how things work, and we see that things are dirty and people don't always like their jobs, and they don't. I hesitate to use the word realistic, but it makes it more natural,
Yeah.
It's that lived-in universe that they like to talk about.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think Force Awakens and Last Jedi did that well for recent films.
Mm-hmm.
And some Clone Wars and Bad Batch episodes too. You get to see some of these Imperial bases on the inside.
Right. Some nice action here. A lot of shooting.
Clothesline.
Clotheslining.
Pew, pew, pew.
Yeah, very action oriented episode for sure. Lots of really
Now, are we noting that that we've got as a cohesive unit here? It's the feminine force. It's basically specifically the group of the most badass women so far. In kind of Star Wars all together. Doing their portion of the invasion. They were tasked with being their own kind of separate unit here and really kicking ass.
Yeah,
and they do.
Yeah,
yep.
Kick ass.
And Moff Gideon,
a huge deal of it, but it's obvious, as the viewer, if you see it multiple times, you're like, that's awesome. Appreciate that.
mm-hmm. It's almost like this could be its own spin-off.
Right.
Did this predate chronologically the release of Endgame and kind of the having all the female Avengers kind of all together, all the female kind of characters, all like one attacking group at one point, just kind of give everyone the satisfaction of seeing that?
I don't know which came first, but I think this does it a lot better. That scene in Endgame felt really forced.
Yeah.
Sure.
This feels really natural.
They just had too darn many characters by the last Avengers movie.
Mm-hmm.
But Moff Gideon is not messing around. As soon as he realizes the threat here, he activates this full like Terminator mode, where you've got all these machines coming alive.
I don't understand why the stormtroopers say halt and our good guys just blast away, right?
Well,
Fearless.
They have procedures to follow.
Yeah, apparently their procedure is, take
Halt,
them alive.
They have to say halt at least once before they
say halt once.
Stormtroopers aren't known for their tactical brilliance.
Yeah.
It's always quantity over quality with the Empire.
Yeah, and you see that here. I mean, lots of these stormtroopers meet their ending.
I love the way the backgrounds and the lighting and all of this and the color palette that they use is very much like the scenes in the Death Star in the original film. All that red and dark gray just looks great. And it's very Star Wars. I like it because it's nostalgia, but not blatant nostalgia. It's reminding me of the original film, but not by shoving stuff in my face.
Yeah.
But yeah, the light, the wall lighting, the panel lights, the layout, even, yeah.
But one thing we don't know about these stormtroopers is, with this being 5 years post Death Star 2, were these guys drafted or, because this is just the remnants of the Empire. This isn't the First Order yet. So,
maybe they're mercenaries. Maybe they're being paid.
Yes. What kind of training do they have to be in this situation?
Or, clearly not much.
Yeah.
They might just be leftover stormtroopers. They don't have anything else to do with themselves. So
Yeah, I mean,
It's
not everybody was there at the Death Star too, right? It's like Moff Gideon
Right.
wasn't there, right?
Gideon's giving them a bunk and 2 square meals a day.
Yeah.
Then why leave?
3 hots and a cot. Yeah.
Of course, this is why leave, because you'll eventually, if you're a stormtrooper, you'll eventually get murdered by a ragtag group of commandos.
Right.
And this is one of the few scenes where we see how physically imposing Cara Dune is.
Mhm.
Plus, it's like she's, when Fennec shot that stormtrooper, she said thanks instead of like, I could have had that like some, egomaniacal guy. Yeah.
Yeah, because like the whole bickering teammates thing, that gets tedious after a while. So it's nice to just see them be
Appreciate
competent and get the job done.
Yeah.
Mhm. And that's been done many times over in Star Wars. Clone Wars, Bad Batch, the films.
Mm-hmm.
That was the way team members talk to each other. So this is being a new team. It's a little refreshing, I guess.
Yeah, nice to see him do something a little different.
Good thing that door closed. This is kind of a fair fight.
Ish.
Not really for me. And
So,
yeah,
yeah,
it's tough battle right here for him, no doubt.
I'm not.
These troopers remind me of those things, the boxing things that you used to do for the board game.
The Rock'em Sock'em Robots.
Yeah, Rock'em Sock'em.
Yeah.
They kind of have the same movements and stuff.
And of course, we got to try fire.
Yep.
Always try fire.
Got to do that Terminator moment.
Not going to work. So
But the Beskar holds. I mean, it took a pounding, man. But the Beskar's, Beskar is Beskar.
Yeah.
It holds up.
So is there anything in the kind of background lore, like in the books and whatever? I'm not as up on that as I used to be. Has they ever explained why the Empire uses human troops and not droids, not battle droids for their stormtroopers? Are droids just too expensive, or?
I think that's a
Laws
question
against
we've
them after
asked
the prequels, maybe? I don't know.
I think we've asked that question before. I don't know if we've ever come up with an answer.
Mhm.
Because they do.
Yeah.
They establish in I can't remember where, but they established that they decide to stop using clones and start just using trained people. But why not droids?
It must be they just thought they were only capable of so much.
Yeah. I mean, in looking at how the battle droids do in Clone Wars, it's not a glowing endorsement.
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe it's cheaper just to get a human being under that versus building them, I guess.
Right.
So they did a pretty good job here taking over this
Yeah.
Star Destroyer.
So far, so good.
It went pretty well.
I mean, it's probably not like a fully staffed, everybody at all stations kind of Star Destroyer.
Yeah, she mentions that in the briefing scene at the beginning, that it's supposed to have like a staff of 500 people, but this one's really understaffed. It's all that quiet quitting that the Empire's been doing.
Right.
Those cute, tiny, evil handcuffs.
I know. Who has handcuffs that small?
Baby shackles.
Come on.
Baby shackles.
That's just messed up. Only the Empire would have 10 different sizes of handcuffs.
Yeah. I wish Grogu gave him like a little wave, like, hi.
Or like one of these, sorry.
Yeah.
I don't know if you noticed, I picked that image of him holding the Darksaber like right over the baby, and I used it as the image for the thumbnail for this live stream and said, watch this or the baby gets it.
Little clickbait there.
No.
Are we above that? I don't think we are.
Yeah. Never works.
But this is definitely a trope, right? So you have like our hero and our villain staring each other down. It's a Western, kick over your weapon, or the kid gets it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. He starts monologuing here, and Mando just could not care less. He's like,
No.
I do not care. Bo-Katan already tried explaining that stupid weapon to me. Don't care.
I just want my little friend back here.
Right.
Give me my little green guy back.
He's weighing his options. He's like, villains like to monologue. He knows this. So he's like, all right, what can I do here?
Yeah. And why does he bring up that, he wants Grogu's blood, or he got Grogu? Is he, is he making a Snoke? What's he doing with the blood?
He's torn between not wanting to reveal his plans and wanting to brag about how brilliant his plan is.
Right. I did something really cool.
But I'm not going to tell you.
I can't tell anybody else about it.
Yeah, I think he wants to do more than just study. He's not like some puritanical scientist here. He's got nefarious plans for that.
So are his nefarious plans with this Force blood to help out Emperor Palpatine? Is this connected to Rise of Skywalker and Snoke?
I mean, that's a really good question, because these Imperial warlords who are now in place, are they out for themselves, or are they still loyal to the idea of the Empire? I don't know.
Don't know for sure.
From some of the scenes we see at the end of season 3, it seems like a lot of them are, working independently. They've all got their own thing going in their corner of the galaxy.
They're kind of like a cartel, right? They run they have a loose organization, but they're basically out for themselves.
Yeah, it's
as long as their self-interests are, met,
right.
They'll be part of this group or cartel or whatever you want to call these guys.
And that's because nobody as powerful as Palpatine has stepped in to take over, to unify them.
And philosophically, they probably do believe in a certain amount of order and stuff, because that was a big part of the Imperial draw, was bringing order to the galaxy.
So who's the better swordsman here? It looks like Moff Gideon's slightly better swordsman than Din Djarin is.
He seems to have, he's more formal.
Yeah.
Din is just a bunch mentally falls down. Yeah. Din's a more powerful character.
He's been taking karate classes.
And Gideon was all studied up on Mando's suit, like the weaponry of it. Mm-hmm. But how did he not know the pure Beskar element would block the Darksaber?
Yeah, I didn't know about that spear either. I guess he just got it since Moff Gideon did his research.
That's the trouble with megalomaniac villains, is that they're megalomaniac villains.
Yeah. His dossier on Mando was not up to date with the spear that he got from the magistrate. So,
or he just didn't read the report all the way to the end.
He skimmed it.
Yeah,
he knew about the whistling birds and then tuned out.
But he's still smart. He can tell Bo-Katan is pissed because
he's trying to turn them against each other here. Yeah,
classic.
Trying to have them poke at each other's.
Well, what else you can do as a bad guy? You gotta try to turn the heroes against each other.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like one of them should just punch him.
Just
shut him up.
Talking. Or just knock him unconscious. You don't have to listen to him.
He still really has control of this room.
Yeah, he kind of does, even though he's on the floor in handcuffs.
Yeah. Oh boy.
It's good. It makes things complicated.
Yeah. And him sort of explaining how the foundation of all Mandalorian government is kind of ridiculous when you think about it.
Well, it's like, in jolly old England, right, where you had King Arthur wielding Excalibur, so he had the power and the throne there for the round tables. So
I don't think you got the throne if you got Excalibur, though. I don't think they had the same weird arbitrary rules that the Mandalorians have.
Yeah, there's just no Lady of the Lake this time.
I mean, it's definitely feudal. It's
yeah.
But it's weird to have Moff Gideon explaining these rules with two Mandos standing.
With all these Mandalorians in the room.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're about to face off with the Dark Troopers. I mean, it really, really looked like everyone was screwed at this point. I mean,
Mhm.
Oh, absolutely.
there
Yes.
was,
They
there was
set this
absolutely
up
no
really well.
way that the assembled people, and we've got some really powerful people. We've got a really amazing group that's been put together at this point.
Mhm.
But to face the Dark Troopers, they're screwed.
Yeah, they just don't have the
Yeah.
firepower to take
Yeah.
these guys on.
Yeah, so I mean, we're looking at a really dark moment here about what could possibly happen, who could possibly face off, how can our heroes get out of this situation?
Yeah.
I always tell my son at this part of any movie or TV show, it's not looking good for our heroes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kinda
Moff,
set up.
Gus Fring here, he's completely confident that he's going to get rescued out of this situation.
Yeah,
He's
now
probably right.
Probably justifiably so, right?
Yeah.
He knows what these things can do.
I had not been spoiled at this point. I mean, watching this episode and actually so the situation had been that I had to go into work like the day that this came out. I always try to avoid spoilers as much as possible, watch these things as soon as I can because I read the internet, I follow pop culture news pretty closely, and I didn't want to be spoiled on this. I had to run into the office, and I also had my daughter who's been on the show before, Lily. So we had run into the office, and I wanted to try to see this as soon as possible. And we'd actually camped out in the conference room of my office and had my laptop plugged into the projector in the main conference room, specifically to try to watch this. And we were watching this, and when the pivotal moment comes here, I start freaking out. She could tell you, just my visceral reaction as soon as we see the moment that's coming up here, which is, as soon as we saw that it was an X-Wing that shows up, and I pause it and I just start freaking out to talk to her about how big of a moment that is to me at that time.
Yeah. These are one of the bigger moments in the Star Wars period, I think. I don't know, top 5 at least.
Well, and my favorite thing in Star Wars is Luke in Return of the Jedi. I mean, that's still I'd say that's still my pivotal moment is that Luke, that Jedi, specifically Luke at the peak of his abilities in Return of the Jedi.
But clearly he isn't. This is really, as we will see, it's his peak, right?
Well, we got so little of it. That's the thing. I mean, we get so little of Luke at the height of his powers in Return of the Jedi.
Yeah. And beginning part of the movie, he's still kind of a Jedi Knight, but he's still got stuff to learn and powers to get or whatever. Yeah, when he shows up here, it's pretty epic.
Yeah, he's clearly on top of his game here.
Yes.
And it's a great scene. It's a great callback. So far, this series has kind of skirted the characters from the classic series. I mean, we got Boba Fett, and that was really great.
Yeah, as soon as we saw that X-Wing, as soon as we saw that would arrive, I'm freaking out about it right now. I mean, I'm reliving that moment, emotionally for me.
Oh,
that first stirring, that first inkling in my heart that's what we're gonna get, and we see it landing. I'm like, is it? Could they? Will they? Is it even?
Everybody's shocked. It's a huge moment.
Yeah.
Especially if you avoided the spoilers. I was just like, you got it.
And then the baby knows. I mean, the baby, you could see it on the baby. The baby starts getting a sense of who's shown up,
There's a force user really close.
And Giancarlo Esposito does a hell of a job acting without saying a word here. Just because he, like we said earlier about him, doing his homework, he knows who that is. So it's just he knows the threat is here.
Yeah, it's like the baby knows, Moff Gideon knows, and then you see the cloaked figure. I'm like, there's no way. There's absolutely no way on a TV show in 2021 or whatever. Yeah. But then you see that, and I'm like, it has to be. And how are they going to do it? I'm freaking out about it now, reliving that moment 2 years later.
Look at
as soon as you saw the green lightsaber, it's over at that point. You know exactly who this is.
Now you know who it is.
Yeah, the disbelief dissipates a little bit when you finally see that green lightsaber, right? It's like, okay, it is. I think it is.
And it is the thing that we never got, which is Luke at his peak and a long form version of it. I mean, it's as big as Darth Vader at the end of
Rogue One.
It's that payoff moment of being able to see stuff in action in a way that we never could back in the 80s. You know, they just didn't have the fighting technique, the you know, the special effects level. I mean, it's getting to see 1983 Star Wars in a way that we couldn't in 1983. You know, that equaled our imagination. I'm off.
Yeah, we're not going to let you take yourself out. Take a prisoner.
He must not have the electric tooth. That wasn't an option.
He'd be too arrogant to fit himself with an electric tooth.
Yeah.
Up until this moment, he did not believe that he could possibly lose.
Sure, it's like Tarkin. You know, in our moment of triumph, you know,
that imperial
how could this go wrong? Yeah.
Now watch him just carve through these guys like they're nothing. This is really well done. All of this is just great.
Yeah, this is great cinematography and
the
all the setup and script. Yeah, it's
the slow reveal of it. First, you see X, then you see cloaked figure, then you see some sort of lightsaber, then you see green lightsaber, then you see like the moves that Luke has that you kind of recognize.
Yeah, and we see the different characters' reactions to him showing up.
And he just has no fear. Like he's gonna come out.
He's like a
full on using the Force. This is like Jedi at their peak, like during Episode 1. You know,
room full of killer droids, no problem.
Yoda's like awesome.
Yeah, that's a good point about the slow reveal. If Cara Dune looked out the window and said, "Oh, Luke Skywalker, we're saved," it would not have had the same.
That would have said.
Just crushes him.
Awesome.
Yeah,
and remember, this is
Force powers.
This is Luke 5 years on from the end of Return of the Jedi, so clearly he's been practicing a little.
Yeah, his crush moves.
What has he been up to this whole time?
Yeah.
But if you think about it, he doesn't have a trainer. Like,
no, he's figuring it out for himself.
Masters, yeah.
Ahsoka and other people have had way more lightsaber training than Luke ever did.
Yeah. But what he does have is he is the son of the most powerful Jedi who ever lived. So there's that.
Very much his fighting style too. I like how they keep kind of the details of that, right? How he uses his lightsaber and stuff too. The way his movements, very, very Luke-like.
Yeah, it's still more. It's more
go back to the original films, right? They kind of keep that detail,
right? And it's not so formal and martial artsy like the It's much more brute force.
Yep.
Luke.
Yep. This part right here, when he drops the hood, they give a little cue of a binary sunset. You know, the Force theme.
Yeah, so his theme, Luke's theme,
connects it all musically.
And the CG is not bad. It's not. I mean, it's as good as it could be. I think it doesn't take you out of the story. You know.
I mean, that actually proved to be false. Is that they spent a ton of money and what they thought was the best capabilities, and then like people who could do deep fakes on the internet proved that they could do it much better than the people that they hired. And I believe that they took the guy who did one and put it up on YouTube and hired him after this.
They did. There was a guy who redid this scene and they hired him to do all the Luke scenes in Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah, because he did it much better than what they thought could be done.
Right.
Yeah, there's a really good documentary on Disney Plus just about Luke in this episode.
Yeah.
But I think it works, and I think it's fine for a scene this short. I think if he was going to talk to us for like a whole multiple episode arc, I think we might want to think about getting a new actor. But for a short little scene where he only has a few lines, I think it's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. It doesn't take me out of the scene.
Yeah, and we get the resonance of it being the Luke that we all remember.
Because the main story is still right here. It's
That's how the waterworks start. Because he has to say goodbye to him, so he makes a decision to take off his helmet in front of a room full of people.
That's how much Grogu means to him.
Yeah, and again, he's still perfectly groomed, which is utterly impossible under that helmet. There's no way he looks like that. That his beard is perfectly groomed, his hair is perfectly groomed. There's no way.
They cut it. They cut out the scene when they were in hyperspace. He spent 45 minutes in the refresher just grooming and getting all primped and ready.
It's like in
Right.
Batman. I'm going to compare it to a superhero thing. It's like in Batman Returns, where clearly Michael Keaton has black like makeup around his eyes every time he's in the hood, but then in Batman Returns he tears it off his face, and in the cut, it's like all of a sudden there's no black makeup around his eyes.
Well, no, he's got little makeup wipes built into the inside of the mask,
Right.
so it just gets so
Smart.
rosy.
I think Grogu was surprised that he wasn't green underneath. He's like, oh,
Yeah, he didn't know
that's
what
the
to
dude.
do.
Why are your ears so small?
Right.
R2D2, freaking
Still
R2D2.
working. Yeah.
This arguably this got me more than Luke did, having R2 roll around the corner.
Yeah.
That was just like the icing on the cake. You know?
On having Grogu meet R2D2, I mean, two of the most cutest toys ever
Right.
to come out of Star Wars. You know,
Cuteness overload.
like the stuff of Christmas legend.
Sure.
I think the other people in the room here, they don't know how cool R2 is, like how important he was to the entire
Mhm.
history of their universe.
And a
Yeah,
dude
but
head
we
nod,
do. We know.
a dude head nod between Luke and between Din. You know,
Yeah.
he's like, "What's up?"
But this is just devastating. I mean, you've got nostalgia, but it's also so hard to break up Din and Grogu here. Like, how can you
Mhm.
do that to your audience as a show?
Yeah.
But that was
So
his
we
mission.
all think the show is over, right? This is it.
His mission
We're
was
done.
to deliver the baby. I mean, that's been his goal for 2 seasons.
Yep.
Right.
Since the first episode, since he found the baby and decided to keep the baby, that's been his mission, is to
Yeah.
return the baby.
Yep. Yep.
Yes. Thank
So I
thank
do
you.
have a question about that
That's
post-show,
what
if we
we've
want
been
to
waiting
break it.
for.
Yep. This is the payoff, I guess.
Sometimes your goals aren't what you think they are.
Yeah. But a Luke giving him "May the Force be with you." I mean, that's gets you right there.
Yeah.
And then walking off with Yoda and Grogu.
And had this been the end, I think I would have been perfectly satisfied. This
Oh
would
yeah.
have been a great ending to the series.
I'll be right here.
Gives him a little nod. Yo, be good, kid.
Mhm. Yeah, if season 3 started off with some kind of intro by Bo-Katan saying, "All right, now it's my story,"
Right.
something-
Written by Jon Favreau, of course, but directed by Peyton Reed, who directed the Ant-Man movies.
Yeah.
Mhm. Where they used the de-aged technology for Michael Douglas.
Yep.
So they kind of knew their options as far as how to deep fake someone.
least
Even
they
with
thought-
all the footage they had, they still went the make them look younger route.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because they had
clearly
Mark
that's
Hamill
the
on set.
technology they used what they had done with the de-aging in the Marvel movies, which has generated complaints. But
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, it's not. I mean, I think what they did in when Luke appears in Book of Boba Fett and what they did in the recent Indiana Jones film is much more effective than what they did here and what they
Yeah.
did in Rogue One with Tarkin.
yeah,
It's much. I mean, you still know you're looking at something that isn't real, but it's not as obvious.
they've a little bit uncanny. They
Yeah.
de-uncanny valley did a little bit.
Exactly,
Yeah.
because the approach and it's particularly unsuccessful in Rogue One, I think, but it's very much it's animation trying to recreate a human face,
One of
especially
the
in the
harder
case of-
things to do. Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, it's difficult, really difficult.
and really in this case recreate Luke's human face, which is a face that we all know what he's supposed to look like, because how many times have we watched those 3 movies that he's in?
Yeah.
So
And
we
I
know
mean,
what he's supposed to look like.
This is an improvement over Leia and Tarkin in Rogue One, and then it gets better after here. So
Right, once they adopt the
Yeah.
different the deep fake technique instead
Yeah.
of this animation technique.
yeah. I think
Again,
I think ways like, okay, this is how we do this. This is how the Marvel movies did it.
Mhm.
This is how we did it in Rogue One. So this is we're going to do it here, and this is the
Right.
best that can be done. It's like deep people on the internet with deep fakes were like, hold my beer,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And honestly, kind of where a lot of people are just complaining about, really, it's not that important. The story's great.
Yeah.
That's all that really matters. We've gotten spoiled. Can you imagine this in the 80s or even the 90s? We could see such a thing. So
They would have just recast, right? They would have brought somebody in.
Yeah, they would
They need a
recast.
new Luke.
And that would have been
Or
okay.
they just wouldn't have done
You
it.
got the
They
right
would've-
person, I think.
Yeah. Or they
Maybe
just wouldn't
that's
have done
about
it
a
at all.
trope sometimes.
Mhm.
I think, you know, I think you can recast if you do it right. And
Yeah.
the story's good.
Just
I
like the
think
Brady.
I think the current Star Trek series, The Strange New Worlds, is proving that you can recast and it's not a problem.
Yep.
If you get the right cast and the right
Absolutely.
attitude.
Yeah, we're on our third or fourth Spock, and the
Mhm.
newest one is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, he's knocking it out of the park. He's great.
Yeah.
So before this evolves into a Star Trek podcast, I do want to ask. So there's
Another scene.
Yeah, the scene at the very end, our stinger at the end of this season, this episode, where we get to see Boba Fett go into Jabba's palace, bust some heads, kill Bib Fortuna, and then kind of sit on that throne there. So
Yep.
to lead into, of course, the Book of Boba Fett, which we would get before season 3 of this show.
Yeah.
So that was a cool handing off of, we're like, what a Boba Fett show, totally awesome.
Right.
Yep.
We're gonna take a little detour for a little while.
Mhm.
Yeah, and we felt like that was cool, that we'd be okay with this, right? Like ever since the 80s, we're like, more Boba Fett, please, thank you.
Right.
Yeah.
Why can't we? Yeah.
I'm gonna try to get it queued up here. Try to get past all the credits here.
Well, and I think that's kind of what's so great about them doing it on television instead of in the movie theater is that they can do more interesting things on TV because it doesn't have to be a big event every single time, you know? So it doesn't have to be like George Lucas even used to say that he liked doing television better than movies because television didn't matter.
Here it is. Twin Suns. Now we know where we are.
Yeah.
Of course, Tatooine, because it's always on Tatooine.
Yeah, and Jabba's palace is very distinctive. But you know, I'm surprised that I didn't think of this much earlier, but I figured out Tatooine because Tatooine is a giant sandbox, and that's where you're going to play with your Star Wars action figures.
Hey yo,
there you go.
Bib Fortuna, who is, obviously had some Fortuna.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's had 5 years to kind of fatten up.
If I'm not mistaken, this actor playing Bib Fortuna, he's not the guy who played him in Return of the Jedi, but he is the guy who played him in Episode 1.
Correct. Matt Wood. Skywalker.
Matt Wood, yeah. Yep. And he's mainly a sound effects and voice guy. He's the voice of all the battle droids in the Clone Wars.
Yeah, he was an audio effects editor, and then did Episode 1, but then also did General Grievous, I believe.
Oh, did he?
Yep. And some battle droid voices for Clone Wars as well. Yep. But what's funny is he's a Twi'lek, but he also has a Twi'lek slave dancer, like Ula. But she gets away, doesn't get fed to a Rancor, which is nice. And he drops a McClunky to his henchman there to get up the stairs.
I do love the black undergarment on Boba Fett. It is such a visual improvement to the character.
Mm-hmm. The fresh coat of paint on the armor is nice too.
I'm going to go ahead and add in a comment here from the Peanut Gallery. Someone who no one here is married to or has kids with, Linda. No. It looks like he has Captain Trips from the stand. Yeah, I totally get that. I totally love that.
Yeah, Bib Fortuna's seen better days.
Yeah.
Well, he won't have any more. So
right. But he left him some spatchka, so that's nice.
But there's our last image there of Boba Fett and Fennec Shan there on the throne, on Jabba's throne. It's like, okay, a tease for the book of Boba Fett.
Yeah. And even though there was a lot of rumors, like Disney was smart to not confirm that this series was well underway. That was their big announcement right there happening in the show, in universe.
Right.
Yep. And then also another comment on Linda visually from earlier in the show that the Dark Troopers have Cylon vibes. I can definitely see that. Definitely Cylons from more like the original series.
Yeah, the look and the behavior and just like that looming death coming for you, right?
Sure. Just that faceless
nightmares.
I always think of the Terminator, just that it absolutely cannot stop.
Yeah, thank you, Linda, for jumping in and kind of giving us some color commentary there.
Very nice. So before we wrap up, I did want to kind of touch on real quick one thing that you said, Jefferson. You said if this show ended at the end of this season, at the end of this episode, you'd be okay with it. So
Mm-hmm.
knowing what we know about Star Wars fans, I think you might be in the minority on that.
Yeah,
We
probably.
want the continuation of the story. We always want to fill in the blanks before, during, or after. I mean, even like between episodes 2 and 3, like they totally skipped over all the Clone Wars, right? So we want to fill in that blank. We want to, even back in 1977 when we heard about them. So it's like interesting to think about, kind of the state of Star Wars now. Do we still feel like we want to know everything, or are we kind of okay if we don't get all the answers, or the answer to some plot thread might be in a comic book or a novel or something?
I certainly am. I just want a good story. And if it's a good story about the same characters over and over again, fine. But if they can give me a good story about some different character, that's fine too. And in this particular case, I think this episode that we just watched is a great ending for this story. And so it's very satisfying. So I didn't necessarily think, well, what happens next? Because you can kind of fill that in yourself. The fact that they did do another season is fine too. And I enjoyed season 3 quite a bit.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed parts of Book of Boba Fett. Maybe we'll talk about that later.
But he completes his mission. I mean,
exactly.
He completes the quest that he was on, which was to find a Jedi to return Yoda to.
Yeah, he gets Grogu to where he needs to be.
So
it's a satisfying conclusion.
There's two sides there, right? There's the real world issues to deal with, and then there's the in-world issues to deal with this, right? So the in-world issues are, well, what's going to happen now? I mean, I want to know what happens to these characters next, but do I want to continue with their story? Am I willing to hear somebody else's story? Because the real world issue is that this show is hugely successful.
So they need to do more. Yeah.
Such a great following after, season 2. So you want to hear more. You want to hear season 3. You want to love this show until it's terrible, and then you're going to hate it, and then that'll be it. That's what happens to so many shows that are on streaming services.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, there was that possibility with them introducing that concept of show we didn't know about, Book of Boba Fett. That is Book of Boba Fett now the continuation of this series. I mean, that we had 2 seasons of Din Djarin, the Mandalorian, on the quest to return the baby, and now Book of Boba Fett is now the continuation of this saga.
Of at least part of this saga. But
we didn't know if that was the case or not.
Yeah, to me, the way this episode ends, there's still more story, but there's not necessarily more story about Din Djarin. I feel like his story is pretty much done with. But yeah, I mean, we could have the story of Luke training Grogu, although they would need to figure out a better solution for Luke if they were going to have him be a regular. We could have the story of Boba Fett taking over Jabba's empire, which of course we got. We could have Bo-Katan's story, which of course we get later on. So all the other characters seem like they're not done yet.
We could have Cara Dune, which was the plan. I mean, the plan actually was for Cara Dune to have her own spin-off, the something of the New Republic or something, the
Rangers.
And unfortunately that, the real world got in the way of that. And so we never got that, but that was one of the possibilities in terms of continuing the story of these characters, but we didn't have to have it be Din Djarin.
Yeah. And all of that sounds interesting to me. I'd love to have seen any of that. And I was happy with seeing more Mandalorian too. But as I said, I would have been perfectly happy for the series to end here. I felt like it gave me a good, solid ending to the story.
Yeah, but
that's good, but it also cuts both ways, because then it says, well, if you are going to do a season 3, where are you going to take it now? You've set the bar up here. How are you going to be able to get it up here?
Not only that, but you've finished the story, so you have to kind of undo your ending.
Yeah.
In order to have more story. It's the trap that the Terminator movies keep falling into. The original Terminator movie is really brilliantly written. It goes in this great, perfect circle. The story does. The ending of the movie leads us into the beginning of the movie, and it's great. But then they need to make sequels, and so every movie diminishes the original movie because they have to undo that perfect circular story in order to squeeze in more sequel stuff.
Yeah.
And so even though, yes, I understand the financial reasons why you want to keep making sequels, there are not always good creative reasons to make sequels.
Yeah.
In fact, there very rarely are.
Yeah. Like we talked about last week with, would this show have been the same without Baby Yoda. Well, once that Baby Yoda's out of the box, you can't put him back in. So if Baby Yoda was not a character going forward, and season 3 starts with Din doing some other bounty hunter work, would the viewer care? Would it be that good of a show?
No one puts baby in a box. Yeah.
Well, and that comment, Dale, might go a long way to explain why they made the really bizarre decision to undo this ending in a different show.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the 2 or however many episodes of Boba Fett that Din Djarin's in, where they basically walk back on everything that we just saw. Why didn't that happen in his own show? Why did that happen to somebody else's show? And I think you just figured out why, Dale, because the general audience, who for the most part embraced this show. I can remember when season 1 was going, being at my optometrist, and all the nurses and the doctor were talking about The Mandalorian and about how great they thought the show was. And so, but these are people who are not going to follow all the little minutia.
Yes.
And these are people who, when they tune into season 3 of The Mandalorian, if Grogu's not there, maybe they're gonna switch off. Maybe they're not as interested. So they needed to get him back in episode 1 of season 3, and that might explain why they decided to slip that in a different show instead. Because I would suspect that Boba Fett had a lower viewership than The Mandalorian did. I don't know for sure, but that would be my suspicion. Because I think Book of Boba Fett was much more of a fan service show.
Yeah. So speaking of the minutia, and getting into the minutia, and who does care about the minutia, that we're kind of getting over time here. So, Jonathan, why don't you tell us about what specialness we have for next week?
Where do we go from here, Jonathan? Are we going?
We're going to
Tatooine.
So, thankfully, there is more Star Wars to binge. Whether it's your favorite, your not favorite, we eventually will cover said Boba Fett show. We will be back to enjoy more Mandalorian. But next week, I want you to join us here next time for a very special Ahsoka episode as we gear up for the world premiere of the Ahsoka show on Disney+. So in the meantime, if you're interested in learning more about the Rocky Mountain Fan Force, find out about us on our Facebook page. Find us at Rocky Mountain Fan Force. We'll have a meeting in August 2023, so which you can learn about over there. Come watch previous episodes. If this is your first time joining us on Binging the Force, you can find all our episodes over there on YouTube at Binging the Force. So thank you, everybody out there, for tuning in, and may the Force be with you.
Greetings.
So long, everybody.